So in this chapter we find Lord Kapila is explaining about devotional service. Prior to this he had explained about Sankhya and how ultimately Sankhya leads to devotional service of the Lord. Then Mother Devahuti asked about devotional service in particular. So Lord Kapila started by saying there are multifarious paths of devotional service. Pumsam bhave vidhiyate, in terms of different qualities of a person who is executing them. Actually, devotional service is one. There are no varieties in that. Devotional service is pure devotional service. But then, if one does not execute pure devotional service, it may be mixed with qualities of a person who is executing devotional service. And that is why it appears to be of many types. So, Prabhupada says in that purport, actually, the path of devotional service is one without a second. But according to the devotee's conditions, devotional service appears in multifarious varieties, as will be explained in the following verses. So now, this is very important for all devotees to understand. Sometimes we wonder that everyone is performing devotional service in Krishna consciousness, but still we find devotees affected by varieties of modes of material nature, and they execute devotional service propelled by certain modes of material nature. So, that is not of pure quality, that is a mixed quality. And out of that mixed quality, the lowest grade is now described. Devotional service executed in tamasa, in ignorance, is being described. So first of all, every devotee in Krishna consciousness should aspire for the highest. Why the lowest? Why we should even think about the lowest? But we should know that yes, there are grades in devotional service. I should not fall unknowingly victim and execute my devotional practices in the lowest stage. What will happen? Then it will take a very long time. Because unless we are purified of every tinge of material infection, we cannot go back to Godhead. Krishna is very kind. All the different kinds of desires we may have, the Lord will sanction and try to fulfill those desires in this material world. So, it is essential to know what is the quality of pure devotional service, the first grade, highest. What is the quality of that? So Prabhupada explains that that is given in Srimad Bhagavatam in the very beginning, in the first canto, second chapter. Savai pumsam paro dharmo yato bhakti radhokshaje ahetuki apratihata yayatma suprasidati. which devotional service will satisfy completely the soul, the self. There is a quality to that. It should be ahetuki, no motivation, no cause. I am approaching Krishna for want of this. I am approaching the Supreme Lord because I want to satisfy this desire. These are all motivated devotional service, mixed. So, ahetuki means causeless. It is not caused by certain conditions. And apratihata means unbroken. Pure devotional service is not hindered. It is not that if my business fails, if I have a distress in my life, then I fail to perform devotional service. See, both way you can see. Neither pure devotional service has any material cause, nor pure devotional service can be hindered by any material circumstances. Two things, always remember. No material cause and no material circumstances can obstruct devotional service. Sometimes we may find, devotee may say, Prabhu, I have not been provided with all facilities to execute devotional service. You did not give me mobile phone, did not give me laptop, all these things. You are blocking my devotional service. Sometimes we may think like this. But actually speaking, pure devotional service cannot be hindered. If a person understands this reality, he will never be affected by any material circumstances. If pure devotional service could not be hindered by the activities of Hiranyakashipu, such a big demon who tried to hinder with every respect, forget about giving mobile phone or not giving mobile phone, he put Prahlad Maharaj under great distress, under such a great distress, and still he could execute devotional service, because actually pure devotional service cannot be hindered by any material circumstances. If a devotee has this faith, then actually he has no complaints, because he understands that actually whatever circumstances I may be in today, I may point out somebody, this person is the cause, he is the cause, but actually on spiritual understanding one will understand another person is simply an instrument in the hand of Maya. It is simply an instrument. The cause is my own self. If I am suffering, I may point out somebody, he is the cause of my suffering. But actually, the real and final cause is my own doings. Otherwise, nothing. No suffering will come to one just because somebody wants to give you suffering. Somebody wants to give you suffering, he will suffer. Don't worry about it. We don't have to worry about it. Somebody becomes an instrument to give you suffering, he will get his own karma, he will reap. But for ourselves, we have to understand it very clearly that no person is responsible. No one is responsible. I am myself responsible. And this is not, we have to concoct our mind and think like this. It's a reality. It's an exact reality that we suffer what we have done. This is a clear vision. This is a pure vision from Krishna conscious point of view. Swayambhu Manu actually gave this perception to Dhruva Maharaj. Dhruva Maharaj is a pure devotee. He is not affected. We should not misunderstand. Just like Arjuna is not affected by ignorance. It is just to showcase. It is just to give an example to us how our perception should be. So Dhruva Maharaj was too much afflicted because he was very attached to his brother Uttama, and he was killed by Yaksha. So Dhruva Maharaj, there is no doubt, Dhruva Maharaj cannot shy away from his responsibility and say, my brother is killed ultimately because of his own karma. Let me not act. Isn't it? Krishna conscious philosophy, if somebody applies in a wrong way, may think like this. Anyway, finally, Dhruva Maharaj may think, it is all because of my own brother's doings, karma. He is reaping that result, so let me keep quiet. No. Even then, we have to perform our duty. Somebody is suffering and I stand like this and I think it is his own karma he is suffering. Cannot think. Let us say if a devotee is suffering and another devotee thinks, anyway I have heard in Krishna consciousness, it is all by one's karma one suffers. So let him suffer. What is there? No. So that angle also one has to understand. And our duty also we have to understand. After doing my duty to the full extent, if still he suffers, then we should understand that yes, it is the Supreme Lord's desire. Nothing else can be done. I did whatever is best to my ability. But in spite of that, if somebody is suffering, then we cannot do anything. Then we should understand somehow or other it is a desire of the Supreme Lord. This is a vision, pure vision. So, Dhruva Maharaj was told by Swayambhu Manu, yes, you have to act, and you have to act in anger also. As a Kshatriya, it is required. Without anger, you cannot fight. So, Prabhupada explains in that purport very beautifully. To think that anger and even enviousness is incompatible in devotional service is not proper. You see. So sometimes a devotee may become envious of somebody because somebody is giving trouble to the Lord. Somebody is giving trouble to the devotees. So not that we should not become angry at them. We saw that example. When it is done to the personal self, it has to be tolerated. When it has to be done to the personal self, devotee's vision is, yes, I should tolerate it. This is vividly very clear in the Vedic scriptures. We see that in the example of even Amrish Maharaj. Insult done to him, any kind of, lot of, different kinds of situations, whether to Prahlad or to Amrish Maharaj, they tolerated. But any insult done, any harm done to devotees or to the Supreme Lord, that cannot be tolerated. Then one has to be angry, and even one can be envious. Prabhupada says that. Enviousness towards that enemy who is harming the devotees or devotional service, or anger towards them, it is fitting. But then, sometimes we have to understand that even in devotional service, there are certain limits. When Dhruva Maharaj went beyond his limit, He was supposed to take revenge and give appropriate lesson as a Kshatriya to someone who has done injustice to his subject. Definitely he has to become angry and give him punishment. But Prabhupada explains, anger is such, if it is not checked, it can become unlimited. There is a quality of anger, it can become unlimited. So, that is different. Now here it is explained that these qualities, when they surface because of motivation, personal motivation, then they are under the influence of tamasa. When it is for the sake of devotional service, it is different. When it is for sense gratification, personal motivation in devotional service, then it is of the lowest grade tamasa. So, first of all, Prabhupada explains, everyone should aspire for highest. Why we should go for this lowest? Isn't it? We are all entitled in human form of life to the highest. But we should know what is highest and what is lowest, so that we can discriminate and we can see ourselves. Where do I fall? Am I at the lowest? Or am I gradually rising from that lowest and coming to the highest? At least we should be able to see this. So highest is ahetuki apratihata. That is highest. Yayatma suprasiddhati. And we should take it for granted. That will give real bliss to the soul. That devotional service which has no motivation, not motivated by anger, lust, greed, all these qualities. And that devotional service which in every circumstances it is not obstructed. We still carry on with our devotional service. That is called as pure devotional service. So, if it is not of this quality, pure quality, then it may be adulterated. Now, Prabhupada explains two very important reasons how this pure devotional service becomes adulterated. Even in Krishna consciousness, Prabhupada is explaining this. This is about devotional service. This is not about karmi. Even in devotional service, how our aspirations becomes adulterated. So Prabhupada explains, now one may think we are all conditioned souls, is it not? Now Bhagavatam is explaining savai pumsam paro dharmo yato bhakti radhokshaje ahetuki apratihata. Then we will think, how will I execute that? I am still under the three modes of material nature. Passion is there, ignorance is there, sometimes goodness is there. I am always influenced by that. And you are asking me perform pure devotional service which is unmotivated, isn't it? Which is unhindered. How it is possible? So Prabhupada says, yes, it is possible. Even in conditional stage, it is possible. It is possible if we execute devotional service exactly as instructed by bona fide spiritual master. This is very, very, very important to understand. Even in our conditional state, if we execute our devotional practices under the instructions of bona fide spiritual master, then Prabhupada says it is pure devotional service. But if our motivations takes place instead of following the orders of spiritual master, then it becomes degraded to these varieties of mixed devotional service, even falling to the extent of lowest grade, tamasa. So we should not be surprised. Sometimes we get surprised. Prabhu, he is also chanting the holy name. But we find so much envious, so much angry. Sometimes we may find, isn't it? And we wonder how it is possible, somebody chanting the holy name of the Lord. This is the reason. Neglecting the orders of the spiritual master. There is no doubt. Force of three modes is so great. It's very heavy. Mama Maya Durattaya, cannot overcome very easily. And that is why spiritual life is explained, it is Shurasya Dhara. It is like the razor's edge. It is like that. Little inattention, cut, bleeding. How much attentive we should be, isn't it? So, this is very important. So, Prabhupada says two ways. One is when devotional service is practiced without disciplic succession, then it is all mixed only. There is no question of pure devotional service. Another is when you practice it in parampara, but still you do not follow the orders of the spiritual master. You fail to follow. You have still motivations. You have, as it is said, you are a separatist. You don't align with what Prabhupada says, what the Supreme Lord says. Because what Supreme Lord says is what spiritual master says. He is called a separatist. He has a separate vision. Motivation, separate motivation. Then it is adulterated. Then it can be under violence. In devotional service, sometimes we may find devotees very violent. Sometimes you may find devotee beats another devotee left and right also. Don't get surprised if sometime that may happen. Because I have seen sometime it happened. Don't want to name anybody. I saw one devotee climbing on the chest of another devotee and, just like we find possibilities there, violent we may find. So this is not exaggeration. This is what Bhagavatam is saying. These are all realities. So we should think, should we fall to that level of devotional service where I am completely controlled by my modes of material nature, isn't it? So Prabhupada is saying here, in pure devotional service, only motive should be to please the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Unmotivated should not be misunderstood to be no motive. Only motive to please the Supreme Lord. And Prabhupada says that is not motive. That is our real constitutional position. In conditional stage, when one engages in devotional service, he should follow the instructions of the bona fide spiritual master in full surrender. This is the prescription for all of us. We are all in conditional stage. We should not think, I am out of three modes of material nature. So how we should follow? Prabhupada is saying, follow the instructions of the bona fide spiritual master in full surrender. Why? Somebody may question, why I cannot have independence? Can I not think Prabhupada was so many years back, he gave some instruction, today those instructions may not be very, isn't it? 16 rounds was okay at that time. Today life is very fast. Better I can be doing some service, 2 rounds I can chant. So many things we may contemplate and think. Very good possibilities are there. Prabhupada gave instructions for those times. No, Prabhupada gave instruction for next 10,000 years. We should understand that. Isn't it? So, Prabhupada is saying, why one should think like this? That spiritual master's instruction I should follow. Prabhupada is saying, spiritual master is the manifested representation of Supreme Lord. Supreme Lord has manifested before us as pure spiritual master. He is the Supreme Lord inside as Paramatma, and the same Supreme Lord's manifestation is the spiritual master. He is not an ordinary soul. We should not think. He is a representation of the Supreme Lord personally. He receives and presents the instruction of the Lord as they are in disciplic succession. That is why it's called transparent via media. He receives as it is, Prabhupada is saying, and presents as it is. From the Lord as he receives, he presents without adulteration to his disciples. It is described in Bhagavad Gita. Teachings therein should be received by disciplic succession, otherwise there is adulteration. So, if you don't receive instructions of devotional service in parampara, it will be adulterated. It will not be pure devotional service. That is one. Second, to act under the direction of bona fide spiritual master with a motive to satisfy the Supreme Personality of Godhead is pure devotional service. So in that parampara, to act under his instruction, it is pure devotional service. Even if we are in three modes of material nature, it is still pure devotional service. If fully you act according to the instruction of the spiritual master. But if one has a motive for personal sense gratification, his devotional service is manifested differently. Such a man may be violent, proud, envious and angry, and his interests are separate from the Lord's. You see? So then it manifests in a different way. So, Prabhupada explains how all one can actually find out somebody is not practicing pure devotional service. If somebody is proud of his personality. Actually, in pure devotional service, there is no pride. Pure devotional service, the more one becomes advanced, the more he becomes humble. When does one become proud? In ignorance. Pride is representation of ignorance. The more one is ignorant, the more he is proud of his self. What is there to be proud about? What are we? What is our position actually? Keshagra shatabhagasya. Such a minute, tiny particle, isn't it? So do we have something to be proud about? Ishavasyam idam sarvam, everything actually belongs to the Supreme Lord. So in ignorance only one can become proud of his personality. I am such and such, I am Pandita, I am learned, I am this, I am that. I am master of whatever I do. So many kinds of pride can come. But actually, pure devotional service, the more one advances, the more he becomes humble. That is the most important instruction Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has given. If you want to chant constantly, Trinadapi Sunichena, you have to understand your position to be lower than the blade of grass. Then it is possible. Next. So one may be proud, envious of others or vengeful. Envious and then we want to take revenge. You did like this, I will show you. I was giving an example sometimes back that I personally saw that when I was a temple commander in Bangalore. Sometimes that vengefulness can be such that we are not even aware that actually I am doing some aparadh in devotional service. One devotee was in charge of PPH. There also it is PPH. So our PPH in charge should not think. Of course, there were many in charges in Bangalore. They have changed many times. So I am not pointing out to anybody in particular like that. But there are some cases. So it so happened, sometimes we find it here also, that sometimes, let us say, the milk brought in the DT kitchen may break because of whatever reason. And suppose that breaking happens when you are boiling the milk and now you have no source. So then you will go and approach PPH. Can I get some milk for the DT's offering? And even if milk is available, and if you find this devotee gave me a lot of trouble, I will teach you a lesson now, I will not give. Let us say, either he refuses directly or he gives some reason. No, it's not, I don't have. Imagine. So he is not thinking in terms of, he is using the Lord's service to take his personal revenge. Just imagine. So this can be vengeful like this. So, one who approaches the Supreme Lord to render devotional service, but one is proud of his personality, envious of others, or vengeful, is in the mode of anger. He thinks he is the best devotee. Devotional service executed in this way is not pure. It is mixed, lowest grade tamasa. So Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur has advised, if we find a devotee practicing devotional service, he has taken the Supreme Lord that yes, he is goal of my life. No doubt he is a Vaishnava. And that respect we have to offer. That yes, he is a Vaishnava. That much respect we offer, but we should keep away from him. Keep away from his company. So this is the advice given by Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, that a Vaishnava who is not of good character, we should avoid his association. We should be away from him, give him respect, yes. See. So before I end, one very interesting Prabhupada explains about how very beautiful instructions Swayambhu Manu gave to Dhruva Maharaj to make him understand this anger actually can destroy our devotional service. To what extent? So, very beautifully he starts giving him. He gives him on 3 different levels instructions. One is, just like even in Bhagavad Gita we find, Krishna gave instructions to Arjuna, first on his platform of duty as a Kshatriya. People will call you coward. Krishna is saying. Somehow or other he is trying to, from various level, he is making him to understand what he should be doing. So even from a level of a Kshatriya, he should not act like this, cowardly. Similarly, Swayambhu Manu tells Dhruva Maharaj, even from the angle of, as a Kshatriya, who told you to do wholesale killing? Isn't it? Who was responsible? Are all these yakshas, are all of them responsible? It happens sometimes that, sometimes we find somebody's family person, let us say he was bitten by a dog. He becomes so angry on all the dogs, he wants to kill all the dogs. Isn't it? We have seen this. Sometimes it happens. Some snake has bitten. Anytime he sees a snake, then he'll try to kill that So like that we may find. So like this, Swayambhu Manu controlled him. He said, what are you doing? Ati roshena. This is not befitting for a Kshatriya. Whatever is required to keep the law and order, that much. Don't misuse. Just because Kshatriya can be angry, you cannot go on a spree and try to wipe out whole yakshas. Isn't it? See? Even in devotional service, how beautiful instructions were given. So I'll read one or two of them before we conclude. So one advice he gave to Dhruva Maharaj was, you should understand, Supreme Lord is the Supreme Controller. You are not all in all. So he gave the instruction, dear Dhruva, please surrender to the Supreme Lord, who is the ultimate goal, death personified for the demons, immortality for the devotees, and everyone, including great devatas headed by Brahma, they are working under his control just like a bull which is controlled through his nose. So Prabhupada explains in that purpose beautifully. What does Dhruva, what does Swayambhu Manu want to convey to Dhruva? He wants to convey to him, you are thinking you are the final controller, you will wipe out whole yakshas. Is it possible, do you think, by your action? You have taken up certain thing, I will wipe out this whole yakshas dynasty itself. Is it possible? So even this last tinge of this contamination may be there, Swayambhu Manu wanted to remove from his mind. So Prabhupada is saying, Swayambhu Manu wants to eradicate the last tinge of Dhruva's personal ambition to annihilate the whole race of yakshas by explaining that actually it is the Supreme Lord who is the Supreme Controller. You see. Then he tells him that the Supreme Lord is very satisfied with his devotees when they act in 4 ways. To the envious, devotee should be tolerant. Personal, when it is to the personal self. To the ignorant, one has to be very compassionate. To the devotees, one should be very friendly. And to all living entities, one should be very respectful. Samatvena, he should see with equal vision all living entities from spiritual vision. Then the Lord is very satisfied with such a devotee. So imagine, suppose somebody is very envious towards you, and if we become, let us say, distressed because of that, the Lord is not very pleased. Even from our side he expects, be tolerant. Tolerate. This is how material world is. People will be envious. Generally, we don't create enemies. Devotees are not, generally they don't create enemies. But Prabhupada says material world is like this, that even Prahlad Maharaj, his own father, became enemy. This is how material world is. Isn't it? And one final advice he gave him is very interesting. He said, my dear Dhruva, do you know by your action, you have not understood so many reactions can happen. Sometimes this may happen that we don't see repercussion of our actions. I am acting in a certain way, I am not aware what all may happen. You see, we act childishly sometimes like that. Devotee is not supposed to act like that. So, Swayambhu Manu reminded him, do you know who are these yakshas? They are all descendants of Kuvera. And who is Kuvera? It's brother of Lord Shiva. By your action, you have enraged them. So in that purport, very important instructions for devotees Prabhupada has given. So he said, Swayambhu Manu told him, act in such a way that you are able to please Kuvera and Lord Shiva, so that their anger, whatever enragement you have done, it should not be harmful for your whole dynasty. So very nicely Prabhupada explains. Immediately pacify Kuvera with gentle words and prayers, so that his wrath may not affect our family. Because Swayambhu Manu, in his family only Dhruva Maharaj is there. It should not affect our family. So in that purport, it's very interesting, Prabhupada points out, in our common dealings, we should maintain friendship with everyone. Don't make enemies unnecessarily. You see, in our common dealings, we should maintain friendship with everyone, and certainly with exalted people like Kuvera. With everyone, first of all, we should think we should maintain, and certainly if somebody is exalted, we should maintain friendship with them. Our behavior should be such, no one should become angry and commit wrong to our individual, family or society. See, our behavior should be such that no one should become angry and commit wrong to individual, to family or society. So we'll stop with this. Granth Raj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada ki jai.